If God's truth can't lie, what are you still believing? In Lesson 277 of A Course in Miracles, the lesson says, "He is not bound except by his beliefs." This is the hinge of the entire lesson. It means only belief makes bondage possible. In the realm of spirit, there are no chains because there are no separate wills. What we call bondage, fear, guilt, mortality, limitation, is only the projection of belief. To believe in the ego is to accept that limitation is real, and the mind then appears to experience the effects of what it believes. For example, the world believes in death. Therefore it sees bodies age and die. The world believes in scarcity. Therefore it experiences lack and competition. The world believes in guilt. Therefore it perceives punishment and inequality. But these are effects of belief, not of God. The Son of God cannot truly be bound, but he can believe he is. And belief makes perception. Lesson 277 also says, he cannot be bound unless God's truth can lie. This is the radical correction. If the Son could truly be bound, then God's truth would have to be capable of lying. That would mean changeless love could produce fear, that eternal life could produce death, that pure innocence could create guilt. This is impossible. So the Course is using logic to undo the lie. It's saying, if God's truth could lie, then everything would be meaningless. But because God's truth cannot lie, then any appearance of bondage must be false. Every limitation is therefore proof, not of sin, but of misperception. The instant one stops believing the lie, the bondage dissolves, because it never had real cause. God can will that he deceive himself. This is an intentionally impossible proposition. If God could deceive himself, truth would cease to be truth. Reality would undo itself. But since God's will is perfect and indivisible, there is no self-deception in him, and therefore no deception in his creation. The belief that God deceived himself is the foundation of the ego. The belief that separation actually occurred. The belief that we could make a self apart from him. The belief that the world was his punishment or his test. In the Course's Metaphysics, those beliefs are the ego's parody of creation, the dream in which the son imagines that God turned against himself. That's why awakening isn't about fixing the world. It's about recognizing that such deception never happened. What it looks like in the world. The world acts out the belief that God's truth can lie. War, believing peace can be destroyed. Illness, believing life can attack itself. Injustice, believing equality can produce inequality. Sin and guilt, believing holiness can corrupt itself. Each one is the same lie in different costumes. That truth, love, could somehow produce its opposite. Every time the mind says, this shouldn't be happening, it's saying, God's truth can lie. It's declaring that there's another power beside his. That's why the Course calls this world the witness to madness. The payoff of knowing the truth. When the mind finally sees that God's truth cannot lie, it becomes unbound. Peace replaces fear because it rests on what cannot change. Forgiveness becomes natural because nothing real was ever attacked. Trust deepens because love never stopped loving. This isn't just theology, it's sanity. The payoff is total safety. A mind that knows it cannot be deceived by illusion no longer suffers from its own hallucinations. In other words, to know God's truth cannot lie is to remember that what he created remains exactly as he created it, including you. The downfall of believing the lie. To believe the lie is to make illusion your teacher. It keeps you chasing correction in the dream rather than awakening from it. It binds you to a cycle of fear and temporary relief because every belief in limitation demands new defenses. Believing the lie leads to spiritual exhaustion. Knowing the truth leads to rest. Beliefs bind, but only because they are believed. God's truth cannot lie, which means nothing real can be threatened. God cannot deceive himself, which means the dream of separation never happened. Therefore, all suffering is the shadow of a belief, and all healing is the remembrance of what never changed. Whenever you catch the mind saying, "This shouldn't be, I'm trapped, I'm too late, I'm not enough," you can quietly answer, "Then God's truth would have to lie, and that cannot be." That single recognition snaps the chain. The mind that believes itself bound will always find a chain to polish. The mind that believes itself free will find there was never a lock. Here lies the quiet humor of heaven and the tragic comedy of earth. One world built on the premise that God's truth can lie, and another on the certainty that it cannot. Only one is real, and the other, like all good stagecraft, is merely lighting and smoke. Tonight's performance was called Belief, and the exit is always in the same direction. Toward the light that never lied. Toward the truth that never changed. You've just stepped out of the illusion and into the twilight zone.